we're finished. First of all, I've said this before, I'm not ready to sign on the dotted line for what Israel is going to do. I am giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll predict here today that Israel is not going to starve Gazans to death. But if they do, I will say Finkelstein was right, I was wrong, and this is a shame that the Jewish people committed. I don't believe that's going to happen. I wonder if you really think it's going to happen.
Hello, everyone. It's December of 2023. It has been 2 months since the beginning of the Gaza genocide. I am now sadly reporting here on my channel that the starvation of Gaza has begun in earnest. Indeed, these are very dark days. I wanted to begin with a new report from Human Rights Watch, which describes the situation in no uncertain terms. As they put it, the Israeli government is using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare in the Gaza Strip, which is a war crime. Israeli forces are deliberately blocking the delivery of water, food, and fuel. They remind us that this was not an unfortunate, unintended consequence of war, but a plan which was openly stated ad nauseum by Israeli officials. They told us they were going to do this. Following Yoav Gallant's October 9th order to impose a total siege, blocking food, water, fuel, and electricity, Israel Katz, the Israeli energy minister, the one who oversees the supply of energy into Gaza, stated on October 16th, "I strongly oppose the opening of the blockade and the introduction of goods into Gaza on humanitarian grounds. Our commitment is to the families of the murdered and the kidnapped hostages, not to the Hamas murderers and those who aided them." Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, announced the following day that the only thing that needs to enter Gaza are hundreds of tons of explosives from the Air Force, not an ounce of humanitarian aid. On October 19th, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that until the hostages are returned, on December 14th, the World Food Program published a food security update where they reported that more than 85% of the population of Gaza have been displaced. Of these internally displaced persons, or IDPs, nearly all IDP households reported inadequate food consumption, rising from 83% to 93% in just 12 days. Among all Gazans, the numbers are no less staggering. The number of households reporting severe hunger increased from 28% to 56%, an 18-point increase in 12 days. The Christian Science Monitor published a grim article on Gaza's starvation. In it, they quote Deputy Chief of the World Food Program Carl Scow, who, after visiting Gaza, told reporters, "Half the population are starving, 9 out of 10 are not eating enough, not eating every day, and don't know where their next meal is going to come from." They interview a number of Palestinians on the ground in Gaza, including Kifaya al-Kafarna, who stated flatly, "There is nothing available in the markets, no flour, no water, no food. I am glad we have a place to stay, but we can't find anything to eat." Another interviewee, Mohammed Al-Khazar, gives ominous testimony. "This is not a normal war. This is a war that starves you, that stresses you, and pressures you to find food, fuel, and water all day." In previous videos, I've covered how hospitals, water tanks, and bakeries have been directly hit by bombs. Not on accident, apparently, since, according to several Israeli officials, as reported in an investigation by the Israeli 972 magazine, the Israeli army has files on the vast majority of potential targets in Gaza. Targets generated with the use of artificial intelligence. Quoting one source, "Nothing happens by accident. Everything is intentional. we know exactly how much collateral damage there is. Further, the bombing of power targets meaning private residences as well as public buildings, infrastructure, and high-rise blocks, which sources say the army defines as power targets, is mainly intended to harm Palestinian civil society, to create a shock that, among other things, will reverberate powerfully and lead civilians to put pressure on Hamas, as one source put it. Apart from bombing sources of food, water, and sustenance, according to Human Rights Watch, the Israeli army has also been employing bulldozers, in an example that can hardly be called unintentional. Since the beginning of the Israeli military's ground offensive on October 27th, satellite imagery reviewed by Human Rights Watch indicates that orchards, greenhouses, and farmland in northern Gaza have been razed. The razing of agricultural land continued in northern Gaza during the 7-day ceasefire, which began on November 24th and ended on December 1st, when the Israeli military was in direct control of the area. Farmers in this area planted crops such as citrus fruit, potatoes, dragon fruit, and prickly pear, contributing to the livelihoods of Palestinians in Gaza. Other crops include tomatoes, cabbage, and strawberries. Some plots were raised in a day. Trees that yield citrus fruit, as well as the cacti that yield dragon fruit, take years of care to mature before they can yield fruit. High-resolution satellite imagery shows bulldozers were used to destroy fields and orchards. Tracks are visible, as well as mounds of earth on the edges of the former plots. Euromed Monitor gives us further understanding of the sheer desperation of the situation in a recent report on starvation. Comprising a sample of 1,200 people in Gaza, Euromed Monitor concluded that more than 71% of participants reported that they suffer from extreme hunger. 98% say they eat insufficient amounts of food, and 64% admitted they had eaten grass, immature, and expired food. 66%, as a result of lack of clean water, had reported diarrhea, skin rash, and intestinal disease. One paragraph is worth quoting in full. Since the start of its genocide in Gaza, Israel has imposed a comprehensive blockade on the Strip and prevented supplies of food, water, fuel, and other humanitarian necessities from reaching the more than 2.3 million residents of the Strip. Israel's use of starvation as a weapon has intensified since October 7th and has included cutting off all food supplies to Gazans as well as bombing and destroying the Strip's bakeries, factories, food stores, and water stations and tanks. They list some of the Israeli targets, which include solar energy systems, electric generators that power restaurants, businesses, and government agencies, flower stores, fishing boats, supply centers for relief organizations, among others. They also give a paltry sum of just 100 aid trucks entering Gaza per day. This is a far cry from the average load of 500 trucks that entered the Strip prior to October 7th to meet humanitarian needs, before October 7th, when more than 60% of the population was food insecure. But this lack of aid trucks, in the opinion of Filippo Lazzarini, is intentional. Lazzarini heads the UN Relief and Works Agency.
Now, you very controversially have said in recent days, and I'm quoting words that you used, I believe there is a deliberate attempt to strangle our operations and paralyze UNRWA. That is an inflammatory claim. On what do you base it?
I believe that there is a deliberate policy to keep the inflow of humanitarian assistance in Gaza before the war, and Gaza was already on the siege. We had more than 500 trucks a day, and this has led to a high dependency of the population vis-à-vis humanitarian organization. Today, we need more than the humanitarian assistance. We need also commercial truck because the entire market, the entire shop have been depleted. We have also a situation where municipalities are not providing critical services anymore to the people.